Hey guys, for today's video, I'll go over the newly buffed Kafka to show you how to reach her full potential. I'll cover her newly buffed kits, her traces, her relics and ornaments, her Lightcones, her teams, and her Eidolons as well. For her kit, her skill deals lightning damage to one designated enemy and to their adjacent enemies. And if the designated enemy or the adjacent targets are currently receiving dots, all dots currently placed on that enemy immediately produce damage equal to 75% or 50% of the original damage, which makes Kafka insanely powerful for dot teams, since you'll now be able to trigger all the dots that your other dot characters apply. Her ultimate states that she deals lightning damage equal to all enemies with a 100% base chance for attacked enemy targets to become shocked, which is a dot effect that does 290% of Kafka's attack, and she immediately triggers the dot effects equal to 120% of its original damage. Again, even through her ultimate, Kafka is triggering all the dots that have been placed on the enemy, including her own and the dots applied by her other allies. Not only that, but she's also implanting a dot of her own. For her talent, it states that after Kafka's teammate uses an attack on an enemy target, Kafka immediately launches a follow-up attack and deals lightning damage with a 100% base chance to inflict shock, with this effect being able to be triggered up to 2 times, with one use being recovered at the end of Kafka's turn. This talent is pretty decent since it allows Kafka to apply more dots even when it's not her turn. For her traces, her first trace states that when an ally targets its effect hit rate is 75% or more, Kafka increases the target's attack by 100%, which is incredibly powerful for dot teams, since dot doesn't scale off of crit stats and only requires attack, damage multipliers, and effect hit rate, meaning that when, not if, her and her dot teammates reach 75% effect hit rate, they'll get a massive boost in a crucial stat for dot characters. Her other trace states that if an enemy is defeated while shocked, Kafka additionally regenerates 5 energy. The talent's follow-up attack gains 1 more stack, and the follow-up attack can now trigger all dots to produce damage equal to 80% of the original damage, meaning that she really wants her ultimate to generate her follow-up attack stacks so that she can trigger a ton more dot effects, which is why her other trace that gives her 5 energy when defeating an enemy who is in the shocked state is actually pretty good. For her traces, you should prioritize getting her A2, then her A6, then her A4. After that, you should prioritize leveling up her ultimate or skill, and then her talents, and then don't even bother with her basic attack. So how do you actually apply all of this Kafka kit knowledge? Well, you're gonna want to play Kafka in a dot team. If you don't, well then don't even play her. Her entire kit revolves around triggering dots more than applying dots, so her main purpose on a dot team is to trigger the dots that her other teammates apply. So when playing Kafka, you're gonna want to spam her ultimate so that she can recover more stacks for her talents, and you're also gonna want to spam her skill since her skill also triggers dots. For her required stats, like I already mentioned, because she's a dot character, she's gonna want attack and effect hit rate, but because she's also a sub DPS, she's gonna want a ton of speed. For her attack, she's gonna want anywhere between 2500 to 3000 attack. For her effect hit rate, she's gonna need at most 75% effect hit rate, and for her speed, she's gonna want 160 speed. For her relics, she's gonna want the Eagle of Twilight Line set because it'll advance her forward by 25% when she uses her ultimate, which again, she typically will because she depends on it so much, and because she gets a little bit of energy from her passives. This relic set will also be really good for her because it'll help her reach a ton of breakpoints that'll give her extra turns, allowing her to trigger more dots and gain more energy for her ultimate and talents. For an alternative set, you can run her with a 2-piece speed set and another 2-piece speed set, or you can run her with a 2-piece speed set and another 2-piece set of the Pioneer Diver of Dead Waters for 12% more damage to enemies affected by debuffs, or you can replace the Pioneer Diver of Dead Water set for a 2-piece set of the Band of Sizzling Thunder set for 10% more lightning damage. For her planner ornaments, the Lushaga set would be good because it'll increase the attack of her allies, who will also be relying on attack because they'll be dot characters. Not only that, but this planner ornament also increases her energy regeneration, which is good because she needs to use her ultimate frequently. Now if you want to focus on Kafka's own personal damage, which I wouldn't really recommend, but I do get the appeal, I would recommend using the Prisoner of Deep Confinement set because it gives her 12% attack, and it allows her to ignore up to 18% of the target's defense. For an alternative set, you can also use the Ash Blazing Grand Duke set because it increases her attack by 36% permanently thanks to Kafka's 6 instances of damage from her follow-up attack. For a planner ornament that helps for her personal DPS, the Reverie by the Sea ornament would be good because it increases her attack by 12% and it increases her dot damage dealt by 12% if she has 2400 attack and by an additional 12% if she has 3600 attack. The Glamov set will also be good because it increases her attack by 12% and damage dealt by 12% if she is at 135 speed, but it also increases her damage dealt by an additional 6% if she's at 160 speed, which again she probably will because that's her optimal speed stat. For an alternative planner ornament, the Pan-Cosmic ornament would also be viable if you need more effect hit rate, since it gives her 10% EHR and it increases her attack by 25% of her effect hit rate, meaning that at 75% effect hit rate, her attack will be increased by 18.75%. For her main stats, she's gonna want EHR or attack percentage for her chest, speed for her feet, lightning damage over attack percentage for her sphere, and energy recharge or attack percentage for her rope. For her substats, she's gonna want EHR until she reaches 75%, then speed until reaching 160, then attack percentage. For her Lightcones, ironically her signature Lightcone isn't going to be her best in slot, but rather Cypher's Lightcone, since it'll be able to increase her speed by 18% and decrease enemy defense by 18%. And if you have Kafka at 170 speed, she'll also be able to decrease an additional 8% of the enemy's defense. But keep in mind that this speed isn't really feasible, so don't worry if you can't obtain it. For an alternative, Jiaocho's Lightcone will also be extremely good because it increases her effect hit rate by 60%, which is more than enough for what she typically requires. Thing is, this Lightcone also applies a 24% vulnerability debuff on the enemy, but it typically won't land unless you have 120% EHR. Also, keep in mind that this Lightcone is better suited for Black Swan or Jiaocho himself. For another alternative, finally, her signature will also be good because it increases her damage by 24% and her speed by 14.4. Not only that, but it also applies even more dots and becomes her best in slot for E4 Kafka, since it'll provide Kafka with a ton of energy. For a 4-star alternative, the new Holiday Dermay Escapade Lightcone will be viable because it increases her damage dealt by 16% and it's able to apply 10% vulnerability. For another alternative, the Good Night and Sleep Wall Lightcone increases her damage dealt by up to 72% at Super Imposition 5. For another alternative, the Eyes of the Prey Lightcone is also good because it increases her dot by 48% and effect hit rate by 40% at Super Imposition 5. For another alternative, you could also use the Tutorial Lightcone since it gives her 40% effect hit rate and gives her 8 energy when attacking enemies that have their defense reduced, which will be really good when paired up with Black Swan's defense reduction or if Kafka is utilizing the Pioneer Diver of Dead Waters relic sets. For another alternative, the Solitary Healing Lightcone is also good, but only in Pure Fiction because it gives her 6 energy when defeating an enemy that has dot effect. It will also increase her dot dealt by 48% for 2 turns when using her ultimate. For her teams, again, she's only going to be viable in dot teams and with teammates that either increase attack, damage dealt, affect hit rate, or decrease defense and all-type res. Thus, her best teammates are going to be Hysilence, Black Swan, Jiaocho, Ruan Mei, Cypher, Tribi, Huohuo, and Robin. Hysilence is going to be a really good teammate with Kafka since she's the dot playstyle's best DPS. Thus, Kafka, being the dot playstyle's best sub DPS, is going to be incredibly powerful with her. Hysilence also has a trace that increases allies' damage dealt by 90%, which synergizes extremely well with Kafka's 100% attack from her own trace. Not only that, but Hysilence applies a ton of debuffs with her ultimate and traces, which is really good since Kafka can just trigger them all. Black Swan will also be good because she is one of the best sub DPS for the dot playstyle. She applies a ton of dots and she decreases the defense of the enemies. Jiaocho will also be decent since he's able to apply more debuffs, which can give your dot characters an advantage if they're using the Pioneer Diver of Dead Water sets. Not only that, but he also increases damage dealt by 40%. Ruan Mei will also be good because she increases damage dealt by around 68% and gives 25% all-type breast pen. Not only that, but her ultimate, which delays enemies, helps with triggering more dots. Robin will also be an extremely good option because she gives a ton of attack percentage, damage dealt, and she advances everyone forward. Not only that, but her sub DPS is pretty good. Cypher will also be good because she can apply vulnerability unconditionally throughout the battle, and her true damage buff works with dots. Tribi will also be really good because similarly to Ruan Mei, she can increase all-type breast pen and damage dealt, and similarly to Robin, she has pretty good sub DPS and can advance allies forward with her ultimate if she has the Dance 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 Lightcone. Huohuo will also be a really good support since she's really the only sustainer who can also increase attack. Not only that, but she also provides energy, which will come in handy when trying to get Kafka's ultimate and talent triggers. Still, you should be able to use other top tier sustainers and be just fine. For her Eidolons, her E1 has a 100% base chance to cause the target to take 30% more dot for 2 turns after using her basic attack, which is pretty good since even though it's a single target attack, because Kafka has so much speed, she should be able to keep up this debuff while also triggering her own dots through her skill. Her E2 E2 increases dot dealt by all allies by 33%, which has no strings tied to it, meaning that it's pretty much just 33% more damage dealt, which is decent, but for an E2, this is pretty subpar. For her E4, it states that when an enemy target takes damage from the shock status inflicted by Kafka, Kafka additionally regenerates 2 energy, which again, when combined with her own Lightcone, is really good for her ultimate. For her E6, it states that the damage multiplier for shock increases by 156%, and it extends the duration of shock on the enemy target by 1 turn, which is horrible for an E6 and pretty bad for any Eidolon. For my pulling recommendations, which aren't financial advice, I would recommend only pulling on Kafka if you have Hyselines, and the other characters I mentioned in the team section, since she doesn't really work without any of them. If you're looking to vertically invest in her, I would recommend going for her E2 at most, even if her E4 is really good with her Lightcone, since the other dot characters like Hyselines and Black Swan just have better Eidolons for dot teams. I also wouldn't recommend going for her Lightcone, since again, it isn't even her best in slot unless you're also going for E4, which I wouldn't recommend because of how costly it is. So only go for Kafka if you can play in dot teams and prioritize other characters as Eidolons, more specifically E1 Black Swan and E1 Hyselines with Black Swan's signature, or you can go with E2 Hyselines with Hyselines' own signature, depending on how much you're willing on vertically investing into Hyselines and horizontally investing onto Kafka before getting Kafka's E2 and before getting her signature and E4. Anyways, if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have anything to say, please leave it down in the comments below. I would greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.